Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. Today we're going to look at 9.4 Rules of Hormones During Pregnancy and Parturition. So these are the learning outcomes for 9.4 Rules of Hormones During Pregnancy and Parturition. At the end of the lesson, students or you should be able to firstly 9.4a explain the rules of hormones during pregnancy. So the hormones involved during pregnancy are progesterone, estrogen, and human chorionic gonadotropin (HCG). The next learning outcome is 9.4b. Explain the rules of hormones during parturition or birth process. So the hormones involved are progesterone, estrogen, oxytocin, and prostaglandin. Okay, so this image shows a period of pregnancy or a period of gestation. So pregnancy is divided into 3 trimesters, and each trimester consists of a period of about 3 months. Okay, and it starts from conception, okay, and then embryo, and then fetus, and lastly birth. Okay, so as you can see, here is the first trimester, the second trimester, and the third trimester. Okay, so now we're going to look at placenta, which is the source of hormones during pregnancy and parturition. So here is the placenta, here is the umbilical cord, and here is the uterus. Okay, so now let's zoom in into the placenta. So here we have the myometrium. Myometrium is one of the wall of the uterus. Okay, so the uterus consists of 3 layered walls, which are perimetrium, myometrium, and endometrium. Okay, so now let's look at the red boxes here. So here we have the maternal portion of placenta, and here we have the fetal portion of placenta or chorion. Okay, and then here we have the maternal veins, maternal arteries, okay, and then fetal arteriole, fetal venule, okay, and umbilical cord. So the umbilical cord contains umbilical arteries and umbilical vein. Okay, so basically this image shows how oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood, as well as nutrients and waste products, are transferred between the mother and the fetus. Okay, so oxygenated blood and nutrients from the mother, okay, is carried through the maternal arteries, okay, which will then be transferred to the fetal arteriole, okay, and then will be transferred to the fetus through umbilical arteries. Okay, and then waste products and deoxygenated blood from the fetus is then carried through umbilical vein, okay, and then to the fetal venule, and then back to the mother through maternal veins. Okay, so now we're going to look at 9.4a, rules of hormones during pregnancy. Okay, so the first hormone is progesterone. Okay, so progesterone is secreted by the corpus luteum in the ovary, okay, from conception until first trimester. Okay, and then from second trimester onwards, progesterone is secreted by the placenta. Okay, so the function of progesterone is to inhibit myometrium contraction, stimulates uterus enlargement, stimulates the growth of the mammary glands and breast enlargement, inhibits LH and FSH, so luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, inhibits prolactin release, and lastly, maintain the pregnancy by thickening the endometrium wall. Okay, so the next hormone is estrogen. Estrogen is secreted by follicle cells for follicle development before fertilization. Okay, and similar to progesterone, estrogen is also secreted by the corpus luteum in the ovary from conception until first trimester. And then from second trimester onwards, it is secreted by the placenta. So the function of estrogen is to stimulate the development of the uterine wall. It is important for growth of mammary glands. It also inhibits LH and FSH and inhibits prolactin release. And lastly, increased sensitivity of myometrium to oxytocin. Okay, so now we're going to look at the next hormone, human chorionic gonadotropin or HCG. So HCG is secreted by trophoblast or chorion or embryo. So the function of HCG is to stimulate the corpus luteum to maintain the secretion of estrogen and progesterone up to 3 months of pregnancy. So it is produced in large quantities and some is secreted in the urine, which is detected during pregnancy tests. Okay, so now we're going to look at this diagram here. Okay, so let's look at the graph below. Okay, so we have the x-axis. Okay, so we have time. Okay, first trimester, second trimester, and third trimester. And then the y-axis, we have hormone concentration. Okay, so let's first look at HCG. Okay, in the red line. Okay, so let's look at the graph. So if you can see, HCG from conception increases until it reaches a maximum concentration near the end of the first 3 months of pregnancy. Okay, so near the end of first trimester. Okay, and then the concentration decrease after the first trimester, right? So if you can see in this image here, okay, so this is HCG, right? Okay, in red color. So if you remember, HCG is secreted by the trophoblast or chorion or embryo in the placenta. Alright. Okay, so now let's look at progesterone. Okay, let's look at the graph. Okay, so progesterone is in blue line. Okay, so progesterone, okay, continues to increase until it levels off near the end of pregnancy. Okay, so early in the pregnancy, okay, progesterone is produced by the corpus luteum in the ovary. Right, so here is progesterone. Okay, so during the first trimester, it is produced by the corpus luteum in the ovary. And then by the second trimester, progesterone, okay, here is produced by the placenta, right? So now we're going to look at estrogen. Okay, let's look at the graph. So estrogen is in green line. Okay, green line. Okay, so estrogen increases slowly throughout pregnancy, but increases more rapidly as the end of pregnancy approaches. Okay, we can see it from the graph. Okay, and then the same with progesterone. So early in the pregnancy, estrogen is produced by the corpus luteum in the ovary, right? Okay, and then by the second trimester, estrogen is produced by the placenta. Okay, so now we're going to look at 9.4b, parturition or birth process. Parturition or birth is brought about by a series of strong rhythmic uterine contractions. It involves positive feedback mechanism. Parturition occurs in 3 stages, which are cervix dilation, expulsion or baby delivery, and lastly, placental delivery. Okay, so these are the stages of birth. Okay, so the first stage of birth, the cervix dilates. Okay, and the second stage of birth, as we can see, the baby emerges. Okay, or expulsion or baby delivery. And lastly, the third stage of birth, okay, expelling after birth or placental delivery. Okay, so now we're going to look at 9.4 roles of hormones during parturition. So the first hormone is progesterone, which is secreted by the placenta. Okay, so progesterone level drops off at the end of pregnancy. Okay, therefore stimulates the beginning of contraction that will lead to birth. Okay, the next hormone is estrogen, which is also secreted by the placenta. Okay, so estrogen triggers the formation of oxytocin receptors on the myometrium. Okay, therefore, the myometrium will be more sensitive to oxytocin. The next hormone is oxytocin. Oxytocin is secreted by the fetus and mother's posterior pituitary gland. Oxytocin stimulates powerful contractions by the smooth muscle of the uterus. Oxytocin also stimulates the placenta to secrete prostaglandin. Okay, so the next hormone is prostaglandin, which is secreted by the placenta. Okay, it enhances contractions of smooth muscle of the uterus. Okay, so now we're going to look at this diagram here. Okay, so firstly, during the last weeks of pregnancy, estrogen concentration increase. Okay, therefore, estrogen will triggers the formation of oxytocin receptors on the uterus, okay, on the myometrium. Therefore, the uterus will be more sensitive to oxytocin. Okay, and then oxytocin from the fetus and mother's posterior pituitary, okay, will be released and stimulates uterus to contract. Okay, oxytocin also stimulates the placenta to make prostaglandins. Okay, and prostaglandins will stimulate more vigorous contractions of uterus. Okay, so during parturition, the physical and emotional stress caused by the uterine muscle contractions will stimulate more secretion of additional prostaglandin, okay, and more secretion of additional oxytocin. Okay, so this is a positive feedback, okay, which in turn will stimulate further contraction. Okay, now let's look at this image here. Okay, so now let's look at number 1. Estradiol or estrogen from the placenta readies the uterus for a response to oxytocin. Okay, number 2. The fetus head pushing against the cervix activates stretch-sensitive sensory neurons that send stimulatory signals to the mother's hypothalamus. Okay, and then number 3, the hypothalamus stimulates secretion of oxytocin from the posterior pituitary gland. Okay, number 4, oxytocin will then stimulate stronger uterine contraction. Okay, so if you remember from the previous slide, oxytocin also stimulates the secretion of prostaglandin. Okay, and then number 5, prostaglandins secreted by the uterus also enhance contractions. Sensory input to the hypothalamus is further enhanced by contractions. Okay, now it's pop quiz time. Okay, so that's the end of our lecture video. Now I'm going to ask you to scan the QR code, okay, and answer all of the questions, and good luck. Okay, that's all. Thank you. Bye-bye.